Right. So if you're able to see the slide, I'm just going to start with the first part, which is retention. Now, what do you understand by the word retention?
Retention.
Yeah.
From my point of that is also a form of a process which we use, to control the central point of an organization. I don't know if that sounds okay.
Yeah, it sounds okay. I think just looking at literally the word retention, it comes, what it basically talks about is, there's a continuation. So retention means if you're trying to retain something, you're trying to hold on to something in particular.
That's
so
right.
Literal meaning of the word retention is that you're trying to hold on to some action, some process, some policy, or in this case, we are looking at, the resource, which is people as a resource. So the action of absorbing and continuing to hold a particular thing so that they are able to contribute to the organizational objective in the strategic resource management sense would be the process of retention. And in the process of retention, the HR does employ, quite a lot of strategies. So we, as I mentioned to you earlier in the last discussion, is that what we do see is from an outside perspective, for us, recruitment is one word, and that means, to recruit somebody. But there are lots of activities, as we went through the presentation, which are involved from an HR perspective when they look at recruitment. Similarly, when they look at the word, when we look at the process of retention, as an outside perspective, because if you're not in HR, you understand the word retention and you mean, okay, you want to retain the employees, you want to, obviously have them continue for as long as possible, get as much work out of them and things like that. But the whole process of retention basically involves these 4 bullet points which you see on the slide. So at some stage would look at monitoring, the plan. So if you recall, we discussed that when you join an organization, you are given a job description or a job role. And when you're given a job description or a job role, that is nothing but the HR's plan on how and what you are intended to work and deliver during the course of your working with that organization. And monitoring of that plan basically happens in the retention process. So if you're given a job responsibility, assuming you are in, say, for example, sales or business development, your key responsibilities would be to seek out new clients, meet with them, solicit business, look at the process of relationship building, make them aware of the products and the services that you are wanting to sell. And at some stage, what will happen is you will get into the sales process wherein you will send them a quotation or an offer, and maybe a demonstration will be involved if it's a high value product. And once they decide, you look at the process of, payment and, the service plan and things like that. And then that is the whole process of sales and development. And when you look at that as a process, that is depicted as a job description or given out as a job description to an employee. And that monitoring happens under the retention process. Is that okay?
That's correct.
Okay. And the other point that we pick up in the retention process is that because you're working as a part and parcel of an organization, what tends to happen is that the organization needs to should take care of your needs and want. And one of the clear needs and wants is that they need to be able to provide you a safe working environment, wherein things like health and safety, your welfare, employee welfare in general is looked after. And for this, you have certain perks and, say, for example, perks and benefits which the organization provides. Depending on the title and the position and what kind of job you're doing, sometimes some of these perks and incentives or benefits include, things like medical insurance, dental insurance. If you're in a sales job, you might get a allowance, which is a vehicle allowance. And then if you're working predominantly within the office, then you go through some sort of a health and safety training so that in the event, if there is an, if in the circumstances, if there is an event which happens, then you know how to basically, respond to that and basically protect yourself and the assets of the company. So this also falls within the remit of, the retention process, wherein the HR department is responsible for ensuring health and safety and welfare of the employees within the organization. Now, the third point is motivating employees. Now, you understand that, as per science, anything beyond 45 minutes is very difficult, for anyone to concentrate on, and that is the statistics from science, biological science, that if you deliver something, anything beyond 45 minutes, your brain switches off. Now, imagine somebody who is working within the organization day in, day out, and you're doing that same role. So after a point in time, what tends to happen is that that particular thing becomes mundane to you. That particular thing actually becomes, boring to you. So a lot of HR managers and a lot of line managers will basically look at techniques that they will use to keep you motivated or keep you enthusiastic about your role. And that whole process, wherein they look at, keeping you motivated, keeping you passionate about the role, keeping you performing, is nothing but the process of motivation and how to keep the employees motivated, which also falls under the category of something called retention. Now, here we are going to be studying a few techniques in particular, which the HR department utilizes to keep the employees motivated. And those techniques in particular would look at things like bonuses. They will look at your increase in remuneration or yearly increase in your salary. We will also look at incentive and trips, which the organization actually does. That, okay, if you are performing well and you're a part of a group which is performing well, then what tends to happen is that they will make sure that you get some sort of an incentive or some sort of a trip, wherein performing employees are given a holiday or something like that to keep them motivated. So sometimes you will see that training and development which happens in outside locations and out locations in particular. So there are good locations wherein they can have the employees relax. It becomes a bit of a incentive for the employees to travel out on behalf of the company, attend the training, and also look at emotionally, physically, and mentally charging the employees to be able to perform in the next financial year. So all sales organizations normally do these kind of trips once a year towards the financial year end, when the targets are met and the results are in. And what they tend to then do is basically look at taking them on some sort of a vacation or a trip to give them the outline of the business plan for next year, and maybe do discussions in terms of target setting, goal setting, and then also club this together, or basically kind of mix this together with a bit of a short vacation or a short training development trip. So this particular process is nothing but the process of this particular process is nothing but the process of motivation or motivating the employees, and this basically falls also under the retention process. Is it okay?
That's fine, yeah.
Now, one of the last things that there are lots of things, but the four major points that we are concentrating on, the last bit is something called the talent management. And when you look at talent management in general, what tends to happen is that at some point in time, the HR in general has to look at doing something called management of talent. Not all employees within the organization will perform at the same level. Not all employees at the organization will basically be at the same title or designation or say pay scale. And what they have to then look at doing is, under the process of talent management, they look at something like they look at the particular process or cycle of something called selection, development, succession, and that basically happens through the process of this. That happens generally through this process called talent management. Now, when you join, say, an example here would be when an organization is taking on board, say, a couple of sales managers or a couple of staff on a particular role. All of you join at the same level. All of you start training at the same level. You are given the same job description. But over a point in time, the HR department in particular would start to then monitor performance of some of these employees. Even if you've joined in a group, but what tends to happen is they start looking at performance, the returns that you're bringing in, or the sales that you're bringing in, or the work that you're doing, if you're in customer service, how much of that work essentially gets a good amount of, say it gets a good feedback from its customers saying that the person that helped me over the phone was, able to solve my problem, and obviously that gives you star ratings. So this process of managing the talent then tries to create differentiation within the employees from a perspective of, if you do well and if you're performing well and you're able to meet the objectives and the organization moves forward with that, then in terms of your remuneration, in terms of your promotion, in terms of the perks and incentives that you get, you then stand out as against some of the others who joined at the same time. So this particular process, in which at some stage the HR has to look at the individual, has to look at the staff or the employee individually to be able to evaluate their performance and then peg their performance against the incentives, the bonus, the perks, or whatever you call it. They then are done through the process which is called talent management. Is that okay?
Okay.
So we will obviously study about this in terms of a big topic, is because talent management is currently the most important issue which global organizations are facing, is because if you're performing well, then you get poached by another organization. So they feel that this person is quite good, is able to get them more sales, or is able to give a new direction to the organization. The competitor basically will try and poach you, or basically hire you at a higher incentive or a higher salary, and that is where you see a lot of employees actually move from one organization to the other. This happens at all levels, at the junior management level, middle management level, senior management level, and also at the executive level. So HR is tasked with the responsibility of ensuring that the person or the group of people or people who are performing well within the organization stay within the organization, because resource, again, the context of where we are studying this is strategic resource management. That means HR department in general is responsible for ensuring that they are able to retain, not just retain, hire, retain, train the best talent, for the organization. So if they have to retain the staff which is performing well, which is also helping the organization achieve the objectives, they have to look at this process of something called talent management, and that also falls within the remit of retention.
Okay.
Is it clear enough, Alex?
Yes, sir, that's fine.
Okay, good stuff. Now, moving on, what I've done is, obviously for each of this, I have created a slide, and it gives you a bit more detail in terms of what we've discussed. So like monitoring the HR plan, basically, looking at the points that we've discussed, I won't go in detail because I've already covered them, enables the employers to determine if the goals are being attained or problems are being solved.
Okay.
Right? So a job description that you initially receive, and the performance appraisal which happens towards the end of the year, which is done in conjunction with your line manager and also the HR manager, looks at pegging you what responsibilities you were given and how are you performing on those responsibilities. And that is nothing but something called monitoring. And towards the end, if you end up, say, for example, leaving the organization, you're not happy with what is being done, and the job is moving, you end up leaving the organization. So the HR department would then do an exit interview. In most organizations, they end up doing something called an exit interview to try and find out the reasons of why you are leaving. And are you leaving because you had a grievance which has not been solved, or you had a problem which you have faced, or is it something which is you're leaving because you've got a better opportunity? So HR then looks at all these possibilities to then plan something called succession planning. That means if they have to recruit, and this is a term that we get to hear quite a lot, lessons must be learned. Where
Yes.
do you hear this line quite often?
Oh, in organization, especially where something has gone wrong before,
Yes. So, for example, when you had the oil disaster in America, the BP Shell oil disaster would happen. Wherein the BP platform offshore sank. Or I think this term, what I wanted to say is we get to hear this term quite often from politicians. Lessons must be learned, you know. So HR department in general also looks at, putting something called succession planning, and this can only be done if they learn and pick up the clear bits of, faults or problems or issues from the exit interviews when an employee ends up leaving the organization. Okay. Now
Yeah.
I might be leaving the organization from a perspective that, I've been performing extremely well. I bring in this much of business. I've not been given a promotion. So when I end up doing the exit interview, the HR manager will put me through a questionnaire or a process wherein he or she will try to gauge the exact reasons of why I'm leaving. Now, if they ask me questions, why are you leaving? And I'm saying, I'm not happy with my salary. I'm not happy with that. I've not got a promotion in 3 years. So it gives a clear reason to the person is that in this particular role, when you hire somebody and if they are performing quite well and they have been in this role for a say 3-year time frame, then HR gets a hint that the next time what they have to do is they have to look at either an increase in responsibility for that person in that position, or they have to move him to a higher role wherein he gets more responsibility of managing a team or revenue responsibility. So this is coming across to them through the exit interview. And how they put this into succession planning is the next time when they update the job description for that role, they would say that, if an example typical would be, imagine yourself, you're working in Vodafone and you work as Vice President Sales for Western Europe. Now the sales target for Western Europe is say, 200 million. And the candidate is able to perform and obviously meet this target year on year for the last few years. Now, HR should get a hint that either the target goalpost needs to be moved because 200 million is maybe too easy to achieve, and that they need to move it and benchmark it against the market wherein they need to move it to say 250 million or something like that, or they need to look at a promotion, or they need to look at maybe increasing the salary and the perk which the employee gets because he's been performing quite well. Now, if they fail to get these signals or pick up these signals, then what tends to happen is the employee might be poached or, for example, hired by a competitor organization because they do feel that the person has good connections, good contacts, and will be able to give more business to their organization. So even if they pay a little higher salary to get him over, they will gain overall in the business sense. Now, if the HR does not sense this through the monitoring plan, then they cannot put this into succession planning when they advertise this job again in the future. And they have to either look at the target between 200 to 250 million, maybe slightly higher remuneration, and also looking at a maybe slightly higher responsibility. So these are things which are coming under the monitoring plan. But again, in the monitoring plan, there's a key term called succession planning, which HR has to look into, because at some stage, at some point in time, you do see employees leaving the organization, and what they have to do is revisit the job description and the job role so that the next time they hire or the next time they go to the market to hire a candidate, they have the specification of that job role absolutely updated. Is that okay?
Okay.
And similarly, what we have is other slides, which is health, safety and welfare. We are motivating employees through, recognition and rewards. And then we have something which is talent management I spoke about. And towards the end, what are the key things which we look at in particular for talent management? Now, in this particular slide, what we have to look at is talent management itself is a unit or a module on its own. If you want to be, if you say, for example, if you're studying within the HR field or you're studying to be an HR manager, you will study one of the key modules within the course would be something called talent management. And talent management, from our perspective, we are looking at understanding the key terms and the terminology, but we won't go into too much depth because we are not studying talent management as a module, but we are studying talent management within the process of recruitment and retention, and within the module strategic human resource management. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
But this is how the talent management process works. So they look at doing talent planning. Talent planning is something called related to succession planning. Very briefly, if you look at HR also looks at employees at various levels. Now, if the chief executive officer is due to retire, then they have to look at a bit of talent planning and succession planning to be able to see who will succeed him once this person retires. They need to find somebody of his caliber, his experience, and his leadership or her leadership, and then put something in place so that when this person retires from the role, they have somebody stepping into that role seamlessly. Now, in some cases, they have to look at bringing in people from outside because they do not find there's enough strength or enough leadership skills available within the organization. So they look at this planning bit 6 months in advance or even a year in advance. They start doing the interviews to try and bring in somebody who will step into the shoes of the person retiring in the chief executive role. Okay. So similarly, in terms of talent planning, you look at attraction and retention, you look at audit of the talent. A lot of HR departments in large organizations in particular do 360-degree feedback surveys across the year. That means they do not just want to do a feedback from the employee, but they want to see if you're a department head or head of a particular business division, then they take feedback using a 360 degrees appraisal or a survey, but they go across to partners, suppliers, your peers, your colleagues, your boss, and also the people that are directly reporting to you. So they want to get a very good picture in terms of, is the person, what kind of person is leading that particular department? Is the person autocratic, democratic? Does the person take care of the requirements of his staff and employees? So they do something called a talent audit. And that audit also looks at, a process of what you call, 360-degree appraisal. And this is to try and match again the job roles, the job description, and also to see if the person in that position or that power or that head of department is meeting the requirements of, what has been set for in the job description.
Okay.
Now there are other processes and things like which look at role development within the organization. Sometimes what happens is that you will get to see that some employees, after a point in time, when there is no growth possible, that means they are at the top of their game, they are at the top of the organization. There is nothing much the HR can give in terms of additional responsibility. So what they tend to then do is basically enlarge the role from, say, one geography to another geography. That means an example here would be, if you're already looking after sales of UK and you are at the top of your game, they feel that you are performing well, they might add Ireland as a geography with you. So there is not much that they can develop in your role in terms of giving you training, development, or incentive or perks, but they have to now enlarge your role by giving you an additional territory. So sometimes development of role happens on that side, and that is also under the process of something called talent management. Okay. Now, HR department also works with a lot of external agencies, in particular recruitment agencies. So this is where talent relationship management happens, is that they know in the market the confidential information in terms of if a vacancy is put out, and they try and confirm this with the recruitment agencies to say that I hope you're not trying to put this vacancy out or trying to take my employee over or our staff over. So this relationship management is basically looking at competitor and market information collection, which the HR department does in tandem with the recruitment agencies. And there are other points like performance management. They look at learning and development, leadership and management. You will normally see in a lot of organizations what tends to happen is that they also send their staff to basically do executive programs. And these are done because they want them to be up to date and also know the best practices in the market. So you will see a lot of large organizations send their senior management employees to schools like INSEAD, Harvard, University of Berkeley, California, to be able to do 3, 4, 5-day workshops, which is to help them develop a particular skill or a trait or sharpen some of the skills and traits that they have. And this is normally called the executive programs. So it's a short program, and certain employees only qualify, and they are given this perk or incentive to be able to develop that particular trait. And this also falls under something called talent management. And this is normally seen in organizations wherein either people who are performing exceedingly well or people who are in senior positions will be given this opportunity to develop, a particular skill or a trait which is required to run the organization or run a team or, run a department.
Okay.
Management and succession planning is related to talent planning, which I've explained, and sometimes the HR department also looks at something called career management, right?
Okay.
This, I'll give you an example to explain. When you look at, say, for example, are you familiar with an organization like HP? Hewlett Packard.
HP, yeah.
Yeah. Or HP is an American organization, but let's look at maybe a company in the UK, say for example, Tesco or Marks and Spencer.
Okay.
Right? What tends to happen is that when they feel, so the last chief executive of Tesco, which was Mark Boland, they had hired him from Germany. And before that, you had the chief executive of Marks and Spencer. I'm sorry, I'm talking Marks and Spencer, not Tesco, was Stuart Rose, Sir Stuart Rose. Now, he had been leading the organization for, I think, about 24 years. And under his leadership, Marks and Spencer has undergone a transformation. It is not just a high street store which sells clothing, grocery and a lot of other things, but it has developed its business model wherein it is expanded internationally to emerging markets like India, China, Japan, and there also it is offering now some of its products and services.
Okay.
So this particular transformation of the organization of Marks and Spencer happened under the leadership of Sir Stuart Rose. He was awarded a OBE and he's obviously a Sir now. Now, I think in 2006, it was decided, he said, enough is enough. I've had enough. And, I've been at the helm or at the top of the organization for so many years. Now I need to look for a successor. I want to retire and I want somebody else to come into my role. So that is when HR actually started to put a plan in place to find his successor. And what they also did was they did not want him to leave Marks and Spencer. So what they did was they created a role within the organization which was called a chairman's role.
Okay.
So what happened when they got the new chief executive in Mark Boland, they basically promoted Sir Stuart Rose to become the chairman of Marks and Spencer Group. So what the HR was able to do is retain the talent, but also do career management so that they could have somebody with immense leadership skills who had led the organization, I think, for about 26 years, and not let him leave, but be in a capacity available at the board level to be able to guide and advise the new incoming chief executive and also handhold him to step into his role. And that is an example of something called career management, which is done in tandem with talent management by the HR department at Marks and Spencer.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes, okay.
So he was too good. The organization did not want him to leave. And what they did was they even went out of their, out of their remit to go out and basically create a special designation or a title of chairman. And they said, okay, you become the chairman and then also help the incoming chief executive to step into your role. And because of which, he still continues to be with the company. But at the same time, he is now retired, but he comes into board meetings and, strategic meetings, which basically lay down that vision and direction for Marks and Spencer. And he was instrumental in coining that with the current chief executive, which is called the Marks and Spencer Plan A 2020 vision. And he was instrumental in forming that vision for the company.
Okay.
Is that okay?
That's fine.
Good stuff. So with this, what we have done is we have looked at completing the learning outcome 2, and it basically covers, management of resources through the process of recruitment, retention, and employee development and succession planning. So what are the strategies which organization use to look at, recruitment and, selection? So if you have to look at those, you will basically talk about, strategies for developing resources within an organization would be, there is a process of recruitment, there is a process of retention, and when they look at, when they look at the tools and techniques to be able to implement this within the organization, then we talk about things like monitoring the HR plan, health and safety and welfare. We look at motivating employees through recognition or rewards, and then we look at talent management as a process, to be able to manage the employee in terms of both succession planning and also in terms of planning for the resources.
Okay.
Is that okay?
That's okay. Yeah,
That's fine. So what we're going to do is obviously stop here today, and I will send you now an email which covers both the handouts and the presentations for Learning Outcome 1 and Learning Outcome 2. And they will also have handouts which will give you, detailed bit of reading, say 3 or 4 pages in each of the topics individually, and they will help you in obviously firming up your assignment.
Okay. Okay.
Is that fine?
Yeah, that's fine.
Any questions that you want to ask?
No, I think it's okay. It's fine. Yeah, yeah. Well understood. Yeah.
So this is more or less, a practical topic wherein what we are looking at is, understanding the tools and techniques which are required or used by the HR department in particular to plan resources. And here we are looking at resources. When we say resource of resources is people, is basically employees. Because
That's
this
right.
is the most important resource now, which the HR is supposed to manage within the organization, with other resources being limited. Physical resources, infrastructure, other things, financial resources. So people as a resource is also very important from a point of view of management. And if you have the talent, if you have the employees, if you have the staff within the organization, those are the ones which control all the other resources to be able to get the job done. So that is why companies like Apple, Facebook, when you look at a lot of companies, FTSE 100 companies, they pay a lot of emphasis on hiring the right talent, retaining the right talent, and also developing the right talent to be able to, help them achieve the organizational goal and objectives.
Okay.
Okay. So thanks for joining the session today, Alex, and hopefully I will catch up with you next week.
Definitely.
If you look at next week, I think keeping in mind we'll be starting Easter, in particular the Easter break. I think next week there will be no session that we will do. We'll do the session week starting 10th of April.
10 to okay.
Monday. So we'll do 2 sessions in that particular week, because we would have missed out on the week starting 3rd of April till 8th. So I'm going to try and schedule 2 classes, one for Thursday, which is the 13th of April, and then one which will be maybe the other day. Do you know your availability in specific for that week starting 10th of April, Monday?
I've got another appointment that starts at 4 o'clock, I think. So,
Okay.
yeah, if it's going to be early morning, early section, then that will be fine. But after 3 o'clock going, I don't think I'll be. But the Tuesday, which is I think the 11th or so, I should be fine. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll schedule Tuesday and Thursday, a week after, to be able to, do the sessions for this particular unit and then try and complete it.
Okay. All right. So we'll catch up on
on that day. My suggestion to you would be, because there is no class next week, would be to try and attempt the assignments, because we've done 2 units so far, which is one organization behavior, and the other one is, finance for strategic managers. In that, I know there is one learning outcome that we still need to cover, which is the balance sheets and the calculation, which is appraisal methods. But my suggestion to you would be to try and see if we can attempt, the assignment, so that you're on track and this is something fresh, rather than having to revisit them. And if you need the recording of any of those sessions, then do drop me an email. What I can do is obviously I can send them over to you, for a quick review or a revision.
Okay. All right. Okay. So the next Thursday we're not meeting.
May not be next Thursday, no. So I think the next class that we will do will be on the 11th of April, and then the usual on the 13th, which is Thursday.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
All right. Thanks very much for the lectures today.
That's fine. So let's catch up next week, and let me drop you this email in a couple of seconds, which will cover both the learning outcome 1 and 2, which is the last lecture, this week lecture with the presentation slides and handouts. They'll also be available on Moodle. So, obviously there's a folder called handouts folder that you will be able to see. And in that folder, all these will also be available.
Okay, that's great.
Okay. No worries. Thanks a lot for this. And I'll speak to you. Thanks. Bye.